Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
Foundations.
Why was life so important? It was because man is created in the image and likeness of God.
Yeah.
The value of the human person was of astronomical value in God's eyes.
Foundations. Understanding the Jewish foundations of our Christian faith. With Robbo Robinson and Mandy Warby.
Terrorism is in the news all the time, it seems, and there are some people who consider the God of the Bible to be no different. What does the Bible say about brutal, wanton violence against the innocent? And just how recent is terrorism anyway?
That's a really interesting question, and it's kind of in the forefront of our minds all the time because terrorism is like a daily occurrence. We're living with it. It used to be that it was just something that would happen occasionally in far, far, far off places that never actually had any influence or impact on us, and it's been brought to the fore since 9/11. And it's been, like I said, a daily occurrence since then. But there are a lot of people who read or know about the Old Covenant and they think God was nothing but a terrorist who was ordering the slaughter of innocents. But that's actually not the case at all. And I just want to read, together some scriptures. There's so many of them, actually, about what God's view of the shedding of innocent blood is. So I'm going to start with Psalm 11, verses 4 to 5. It says, "The Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven. His eyes behold, his eyelids test the sons of men. The Lord tests the righteous and the wicked, and the one who loves violence, his soul, that is God's soul, hates." That's just one verse.
Pretty direct. Well, in Proverbs 3, verses 31 and 32, it says, "Don't envy a man of violence and don't choose any of his ways, for the devious are an abomination to the Lord, but he is intimate with the upright."
Here's another one. This is Psalm 94, verses 20 to 21. It says, "Can a throne of destruction be allied with you? One which devises mischief by decree? They band themselves together against the life of the righteous and condemn the innocent to death."
And then you've got Psalm 106, verse 38, that says, "They shed innocent blood, the blood of their sons and their daughters, whom they sacrificed to the idols of Canaan, and the land was polluted with the blood."
So you can see and there are many other verses actually throughout the Old Covenant where God expresses his anger, his revulsion and opposition to wanton violence and brutality and the shedding of innocent blood. Now, this study is actually based on the work of a lady by the name of Lois Tverberg, and she has a website called Our Rabbi Jesus. I love her material. I've learned such a lot from her, and a lot of these studies actually are from a lot of her work, so I highly recommend her stuff. And also this is based primarily on an article by a man by the name of Stuart Dorman, and this is sort of based on his work. So, most of us have been stunned by the violence we've seen, primarily coming from the terrorism around the world. We've been mortified at decapitations and things of that nature, and reporters who've been captured and then decapitated, and it's been videoed, and these videos have gone viral. The very first one was actually, do you remember Daniel Pearl? Daniel Pearl in 2002, he was captured. He was a journalist, a Jewish man. He was captured by Al-Qaeda operatives in Pakistan, and on the promise of an interview with some of their leaders as to figure out what was going on with the Taliban and in Afghanistan and all of that. And he was decapitated, and he was decapitated on camera because he was a Jewish man.
Wow.
It was appalling. That was the first one, and since then I hate to say it, but it's become quite common. Now, after that spate of atrocities, this is something that Stuart Dolman wrote in his article. He said, "Terrorism is not an Islamic invention. In the region, that is the Middle East region, it is thousands of years old. And by terrorism, I mean the use of gruesome violence upon one's enemies as a means of terrifying and subjugating those who survive. It is horrifying in the extreme, and it is meant to be so." So we think that this is something new. It's actually not new. It's kind of being, can I say, perfected, that's a horrible word to use, but has been perfected in recent years by Islamic terrorists. But the Assyrians, the ancient Assyrians, were known for their cruelty. And the ancient Assyrian Empire, whose capital was the city of Nineveh, I might add, there is so much archaeological evidence that has been discovered about the Assyrians. And in all this evidence, there are depictions of them flaying people alive, decapitating them, sticking their heads on pikes, that sort of thing, and you know, literally impaling people, that sort of thing. I mean, they were known, they were like the terrorists of their day. But having said that, that was pretty much, you know, commonplace in nearly all cultures. It's just the Assyrians were kind of like the worst of a bad bunch. And an ancient Nineveh, I might add, is actually opposite the city of Mosul today in Iraq.
Oh, right.
So that's where the ancient ruins of the city of Nineveh are. So you can imagine, with that reputation, when Jonah got his message to go to Nineveh and tell the people there to repent, you can see why Jonah got in a boat and went the opposite direction.
Right,
Why would you run into that?
It was like God calling you to Afghanistan and saying, go and preach to
the Taliban.
The Taliban. Oh, I don't know if I'd like to be heading off there.
Not a chance. I mean, you'd literally have your heart in your mouth and think it's a suicide mission, truly. So, you know, when you discover all of this information about the ancient world, something about the modern humanities scientists have been really shocked about this, because they always thought, have you ever heard of the phrase the noble savage? The noble savage is this belief that ancient cultures, while they may have been primitive and savage, they all lived harmoniously together. However, archaeological finds are now discovering, when they find the remains of ancient peoples and bodies, they're discovering the overwhelming majority are dead because of homicide. It was a very, very violent place. And this is why God said in his word in Genesis 6:11-12, now the earth was corrupt in the sight of God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked on the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way upon the earth. That's why he sent a flood. Now, when you read the Torah, you discover that the attitude of the Hebrews was absolutely contrast to the rest of the world, totally different to the rest of the world.
Well, life was so cheap, there was really no value to human life for all those nationalities, wasn't
it? Absolutely. In fact, we might even get a chance to learn about, you know, the law codes of other people. Like, for example, in the ancient world, murder was considered a debt between two clans, all right? You could just pay off a debt of murder by giving your wife or your kid or maybe a camel or a few sheep. Among the Hittites, if let's just say a man led an ox into a river and he was attacked and murdered by another man who then stole his ox, the penalty? Well, you know, according to the Hittites, the murderer would be expected to join the victim's clan and do the work the victim was doing. He wasn't valued for who he was valued for the work he could contribute. So just somebody to replace him on the field, and you'd be hunky-dory. So life was quite cheap then. But according to the Bible, the Torah, it was revolutionary in that age, in that time in history. Because God said, as far as he was concerned, you take a man's life, you pay with your life.
Yeah.
That was unprecedented. Why was that? Why was life so important? It was because man is created in the image and likeness of God. The value of the human person was of astronomical value in God's eyes. And so the penalty for murder was that astronomical, that extreme.
So that's where the life, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, life for a life. That's, I guess, really setting up that understanding of the intrinsic value of the human being.
Exactly, and that is why when people read the Old Covenant now, because we're so soft and we already have this attitude of life is sacred. Why? Because of our Judeo-Christian foundations in the modern world. Yep. But back then, you can understand why, with all this violence, why God had this attitude of some people had to be wiped out because of the sins they were committing. I just want to quickly point out something about the Orthodox Jewish community that many people don't know. There's a lot of problems within the Orthodox community and the secular community in Israel. There's some big challenges there. But one thing about the Orthodox, and that is what most people don't know, is that when there's a terror attack in Israel, very often it's the Orthodox Jewish men who will go out where an attack has taken place and they will collect body parts. And it doesn't matter whether it's a body part of a victim or the perpetrator of the terrorist. They collect those body parts to ensure that they are given a proper burial. And the reason being is that human body is sacred because it is created in the image and likeness of God. They will always err on the side of life. And we see that with the Hebrew midwives in Genesis. Yeah. We see it with Rahab the harlot in Jericho. They told lies. Yet why did God reward them? Because their lie was for the sake of saving life. Yeah. And that was the overriding thing. God rewarded them. Life is always the most important thing. And if you read in Genesis 9:5-6, God is saying lifeblood will be required of you, and whoever sheds it, they're going to lose their life. God had this standard in the ancient world that was unprecedented at that particular time in history.
We're going to continue to look at this in the next program, the differences between terrorism and the Torah, which of course is God's law. That's next time on Foundations.
This has been Foundations, a look at the Jewish foundations of our Christian faith. For study notes, resources and more, see vision.org.au/foundations.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.